Hello and welcome to Metal Man's Weekly Interviews. This is Season 1, Episode 7, and today we have a Krating with us, kinematic guitar pioneer. Let's go straight to the interview. Krating, the pioneer of a kinematic guitar genre, originally from Thailand, lived in Japan and graduated with double degrees in film scoring and guitar performance from Berklee College of Music in the U.S.A. Is now working and collaborating with the music producers, creators, and artists worldwide as a guitarist, composer, orchestrator, and arranger. Let's go straight to the interview. Here we go. Krating.
Hi, Tommy and Metal Madness fans. Thanks for having me. Really excited to be on your show. And thanks for playing my latest music, The Nightmare, in your podcast weekly as well. So my name is Krating, which literally translates to bull, like Red Bull or Krating Dang, you know, the energy drink. And I'm a cinematic composer and guitarist from Thailand. Yes, sure. And so my solo project is basically a combination of cinematic music and metal music put together, which I call it cinematic guitar. Because, you know, like usually in cinematic music, there's no guitar, it's mostly orchestral music. And of course, like we've all heard of symphonic metal, that kind of stuff, right? Which is usually will be the band up front and orchestral as a texture in the background. But in my case, the cinematic guitar music is putting guitar as part of the cinematic, you know, orchestral ensemble. So it's not gonna be like guitar dominating the orchestra all the time. It's gonna be like switching back and forth and dynamic, and the music will have like movement. Some sections the guitar will be, you know, out front, and some sections it will be like strings, horns, and other stuff to, you know, sort of like switch up the dynamics and colors, as well as progress in storytelling within a song as well. And my solo artist project actually started because I wanted to challenge myself. I believe it was last year. Yeah, so yeah, my solo artist project is still less than a year. But last year at year end, I wanted to challenge myself to enter in Thailand's biggest guitar competition, which is called Overdrive Guitar Contest, and which I got second place as a runner-up. And in that project, in that contest, I have to write original music, you know, to compete in the competition during the audition round before we go in to the semifinals and finals and so on. So I end up writing my first debut track. Yes, sure, of course. So first and foremost, I would plan out the topic of my song first. Because when I have the story or some kind of concept, you know, in my head laid out, it will give me sort of like a direction of where to go from here to, you know, the end product. And also I will have like a much narrower idea of what I should be writing or what kind of elements I should be putting in music. Because if I keep it too open, there's too many possibilities, you know. So for example, like in my debut single Warmonger that I mentioned about, the concept is about war, because I'm thinking I'm going to the biggest guitar competition in Thailand, right? So it's kind of like going to war. I have to like compete against other players. So when I got that concept of war, I wrote a song about war, you know. So that's, you know, I used like time signatures like 7/8 and stuff like that. That's not really like a 4/4 or a common time, just to make it more like war and use like epic war drums, you know, and that kind of stuff. So that really helps. First is the concept, and then I go to the actual writing process. So before I write, I usually sketch out the music first, as in I might plan a little bit that I want to have intro here, you know, theme A perhaps over here, and then theme B. And, you know, this section might be the section that I show off my guitar playing. This section might be like the whole unison with the orchestra band. stuff like that. And I will also lay it out which is the part that my guitar is following the orchestra, playing the main melody, or playing or filling in what the orchestra is half space, and which section am I going to shred, like to shred my guitar and sort of like be a little bit more fancy with my playing and put in more like guitar centric ideas. So once that's done, I will go in and actually like do the MIDI programming and stuff. And when I write guitar, it always comes after orchestral music. I always write orchestral music like about 90%, 95% of the time, because I always think about the music first, not the cool guitar ideas or the cool guitar licks, because for me, like essentially like music is the most important thing, and it needs to convey the emotion I'm trying to convey in each specific song. So guitars always come later, and I usually either just jam over the instrumental track that I have, or I might not touch my guitar at all and just like completely use my head and then like input it in MIDI data, because like sometimes when I do that, I break out of my habit of like playing a certain licks that every guitarist like play, maybe it could be like some pentatonic licks or like some sweep pickings or some kind of like sequence scales, modes, treading, so writing just out of my head and put in the MIDI, and then I transcribe the guitar lines later, really helped me like come up with like newer sound and break out of the more conventional style like writing, or break out of my own boxes per se, And once all that done, like all the music writing process, programming and stuff done, I will send my music over to an orchestrator, which for my first two songs, The Nightmare and Warmonger, I worked closely with Mr. Bruno Oliveira from Brazil. He's also an award-winning composer, and he's also worked with Hans Zimmer's Bleeding Finger company as well. So he's a very talented composer, and he is my orchestrator. So essentially what he does is that he would take my music, look at it, and like sort of like look at different parts and say whether it makes sense or not, whether some things like there's too much clustering, or it's not playable on the instruments, or it's just not, like not practical, or whatever the reason. And he will sort of like tell me and then adjust like certain parts accordingly to, what I have in my vision. And also he will also do the programming as well. Like for example, Warmonger and The Nightmare, he does the main programming of the orchestral instruments, and I do sort of like a more textural, like choir stuff and some percussion stuff. But for the main orchestral instrument like brass, woodwinds, and strings, Bruno will sort of like take my MIDI data and then clean up and make it more clear and more realistic sounding. And once all of that done, I record my guitar and we orchestrated the music. I would send over to the engineer for mixing and mastering. My biggest inspiration in the metal music realm would be Dream Theater, definitely. And for guitarists, I really like Jason Richardson and John Petrucci. They are my two favorite players of all time. And as far as in the more composing style, like orchestral music realm, I would say John Williams, the film composer, is my absolute favorite composer. But other than that, I also like other, like newer composers as well, like Christopher Tin and Gary Scheinman. But yeah, those are probably my main ones, the ones that I've mentioned. The best song from my production, well, I only have 2 songs so far, but I would say from the audience point of view, it's Warmonger, which is essentially a theme of evil, a theme of, a villain or evil that rise up and be victorious in the end, and is a war song like I mentioned earlier. But from my personal, preference, I do like The Nightmare more because from an artistic vision, it's just so much more creative, and I didn't have any boundaries. I just mixed a lot of musical elements together, and it was a lot of fun doing it, which is essentially, I wrote it for the Halloween, so it's a Halloween theme song, inspired by my own nightmare where I dream of like running from the demon and evil spirits just to find out that I was actually the demon who killed those evil spirits and they trying to get revenge on me, something like that, which is a really bizarre dreams. But you know, it's so bizarre and weird that I felt like I needed to turn into the song as soon as I wake up. In the next 5 years, I do want my music to reach audience across America and Europe. And I also have collaborations and touring planned out as well from next year onwards. So in fact, like next year I will be finishing up my first album in the style of cinematic guitar, which I will collab with some of the well-known guitarists in Thailand and, you know, international. And after I finish my first album, I do plan to collab with more versatile instruments, like probably new instruments that's not guitarists, and also have other singers across the world come singing in my song as well, so I can expand, you know, the horizon of being instrumental music to, you know, a more like metal music type or more like popular music type, you know, with singings. Yes, in fact, I've already started my next single, which is called Totskan. And he is a 10-headed giant from Indian fictional novel. And I think in Western, you guys know him as Ravana. And this song will be the most epic song in my entire album. And it will also feature Thailand's legendary guitarist, which I don't want to spoil just yet who it's gonna be, because my Thai fans gonna know right away if I say his name. But yes, please stay tuned for that. It's gonna be amazing. The whole song is gonna be a long track and it's gonna be the most epic from the album Warmonger. Metal Madness Weekly fans, if you want to experience metal with a lot of epic cinematic elements and storytelling, come experience my music in the style of cinematic guitar. Let me know what you think. Tell me your thoughts.
You were watching Metal Madness Interviews. New episode is coming out next week. Interviews by Tommy Berkoski from Metal Madness Weekly.